Have you ever started a Monday with a brand new notebook, a brand new plan, and absolute determination that this time you're going to get your shit together, only to find yourself by Wednesday doing the exact same thing you swore you'd stop doing? Eating the thing, scrolling the thing, avoiding the thing. And then that voice creeps in. What's wrong with me? Why can't I just fix this? Here's the truth that might change everything. You're not the problem. Those patterns you keep beating yourself up over, they're not flaws. They're not character defects. They're not proof that you're broken. They're actually brilliant adaptations your nervous system created, sometimes when you were really young, to help you survive. And today, I'm sitting down with someone who understands this better than almost anyone. Lori Montry is a somatic healing practitioner, creator of the Freedom Formula, and the author of an upcoming book called You're Not the Problem. She spent 3.5 decades battling her own adaptations, emotional eating, people-pleasing, hypervigilance, before she realized she'd been fighting the wrong battle. In this episode, she breaks things down. She talks about why your nervous system keeps pulling you back to the same behaviors, and it's not because you lack willpower. She also talks about the 3 things that your nervous system needs to actually feel safe enough to change, and why fixing yourself at the behavioral level is like building a second-floor balcony with no foundation. And lastly, the reframe that will change how you see every single one of your struggles. If you've ever felt like you're working so hard and getting nowhere, this conversation is the permission slip that you didn't know you needed. Let's get into it. You're listening to the Soul Aligned Self-Care Podcast. I'm your host, Tina Stinson, and I had a stroke at the age of 39 from stress and burnout that shook my world. Now I'm laying it all out, the deep level self-care practices and mindset shifts that I needed that kept me healthy, balanced, and thriving. Join me in this intimate space as we explore healing, resilience, and the soul's journey to alignment. This is where real conversations about deep-level self-care happen. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the Soul Aligned Self-Care Podcast. How are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm super excited to be here. I love
Yes.
the space that you've created through your podcast, and just, really honored and excited to spend time with you and talk about all things nervous system and self-care.
Yes, I'm very excited, and this is a time where your services are needed in the world. I can say honestly, everybody's nervous system is a little amped up right now, including my own. And so I'm very excited about this conversation as well. So to begin, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and where you came from and how you ended up doing the type of work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, they say that you teach what you need to learn. That certainly was the case for me. And I struggled for about 3.5 decades with many, I guess I'll say challenges. I call them adaptations because that's what they were. They were adaptations to the early events in my life. I was the 6 out of 7 children. So by the time I came along, there was plenty going on. My mother's nervous system was pretty much shot. She was in overwhelm from the first day, and I knew that, right? My system knew that I was kind of a burden, essentially. Not that I wasn't loved, but I was more than could be handled. On top of that, I have a history of sexual abuse for a period of time when I was 4 years old. So that combination of things really kind of set my nervous system up to struggle. And I developed a number of adaptations that were brilliant at the time, right? They helped me survive those conditions. One of them was emotional eating. And so I started turning to food to kind of calm that noise, the fear, the terror, really inside my system. Right around the time that I was a victim of sexual abuse. So It didn't take long for my little body to start having some pretty good roles and beyond what you would consider traditional childhood chubbiness, right?
Hmm.
And that was scary to my mom because she had struggled with her own body image and her weight. So she didn't want that for me, right? So with all good intention, she let me know that, being heavy was no fun and that I needed to start my first diet, which I did right around 6 years old.
Oh my
And
gosh.
really set me up for a lifetime of struggles with my body and with food. I figured, well, people don't aren't loving me quite the right way, and people are doing bad things to me. And when the doctor said you need to lose weight, I'm like, oh, my little mind put those two things together and said, got it. It's my body. If I just fix my body, I'll be worthy. I'll be lovable. Bad things won't happen. And so, it makes sense. And that's
Mhm.
what so many of us do, whether it's with food in our bodies, or, I need to keep everybody happy, or, I have to be the fun one, or I can't cause trouble, or I have to cause trouble to get attention, whatever the story, whatever our own personal adaptations, we develop them early and then we create a life based on them. And so that's what I did. And although I came from a law background, as I started to heal and figure this stuff out for myself, I thought to myself, there's no way that I can't take this out to the world. And if I change one person's life from what I was living to what I'm living now, if I can do that one other time with one other person, it will totally be worth it. And so that's when I decided to make that change, which probably didn't make sense to very many people, but it sure did make sense to me. And so for the last 15 years, I've been helping people with their adaptations, whether that be with food or any of the other, kind of typical adaptations that we struggle with. And it's through a trauma-informed nervous system lens. And so that is a little bit about the background and how I ended up here today.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I have so many questions. The first one is, what other different adaptations do people use to, I don't know what the right word is, to adjust their nervous system, I guess?
Yeah.
And also, what is the science, if you could share some of the science behind it, like why we do that? So, like, what happens when we use food as a comfort or as a way of dealing with other different emotions? Like, what's going on in the brain, and why do we keep going back to that?
Yeah, such a great question. Really, I think of it kind of in two parts. So the first part, we said, what are some of the other adaptations? And all of us, we do not need to experience trauma in the traditionally, defined sense for us to adapt. Every single one of us had adapted, right? So, and the way we adapt is through our mind. We develop thought patterns, right? And we also develop nervous system patterns, and those match. So, for example, if I grew up and this can be very subtle things, when we acknowledge that some of the struggles or pains that we went through as kids early on when we're developing our view of ourselves and the world and other people, when we understand that some absolutely regular mundane everyday circumstances had a big impact on us. That's not us being overly sensitive or, you know, um, traumatizing or victimizing ourselves. It's just reality. If you weren't
Mhm.
picked to sit at the lunch table, right, that can be a big deal. You're 12 years old, you're trying to find your place in the world. That sends a message to you, right? That can be significant. Maybe you grow up in a house where there's a lot of tension and you feel like, oh, I have to manage this. I have to keep mom and dad happy. I'm responsible for, everything going smooth. So you develop thought pattern around, that's my job. That's my value. If I don't do this, I'm not safe. Bad things are going to happen. Right. So that mental pattern is matched by a nervous system pattern. You become hyper vigilant, where you're always on edge, always looking for, what's going on, reading the room, right? And that is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just as you do that through your whole life, you realize that the adaptation that sets you up for, that was the best you could do in the moment when you're a kid and you don't have control over stuff and you don't know that you're not responsible for everybody else, it worked for you then. But later in life, these become our prison bars because I don't have to be hypervigilant. I don't have to, that's not me. That's not the truth of me. That's just who I had to be. It's who I had to
Mm-hmm.
become to survive. So some of the common patterns are the things we're already naming, right? We that hypervigilance, the people pleasing, the just molding ourselves to be what we think we need to. If we grow up in a house where the only time we're really praised is when we do something spectacular, then we're
Mm-hmm.
always reaching for the overachievement, right? We can't just be satisfied with, oh, I did my best and that was, good enough. Yay me. It has to be like the top level of achievement. Otherwise, it didn't count. Right. There's so many, right? We could sit here literally all day till midnight listing all of the ways that it is possible to adapt. Now, the other thing that you were asking about is with respect to food or other coping mechanisms, right? And a lot goes into that basket. We could put shopping, we could put scrolling, we could put wine, we could put mopping the floor, we could put anything
Yeah.
in that category, anything that we're doing to deal with the consequences of our patterns. So, my nervous system being, patterned to be hypervigilant or easily overwhelmed or whatever it is, that is very uncomfortable, right? And we're smart and we will always try to get our needs met and to help our nervous system come down into a more regulated kind of what I call home-based state, right? So we pull in these coping behaviors to help us do that, to help deal with the fact that now our adaptations have created a life that really isn't authentic to us and that doesn't feel very good. So we reach for something that can help us feel a little bit better. And of course we do, right? That makes
Mm-hmm.
sense. That's
Yeah.
not a failure. That's why the book is called You're Not the Problem, because you're not, right? These behaviors make sense.
Yeah.
So,
Is
yeah.
I'm sorry. Is it always about is it about like the dopamine hit or the like what you get out of it? Is it always about that? And is there a level of coping, I assume, or when you're doing these things that is healthy, right? Is it because we all do it, right? And is there a part of it that can be really healthy? And like when does it like cross over to that unhealthy mark if that's the case?
Yeah, oh, it's such a great question because, and let's just use food because it's a concrete example and it will help us understand and apply it a little bit more easily. But I really want people to understand if food is not your thing, right? There's probably something that you recognize that you turn to kind of automatically to help you kind of get through, right?
Mm-hmm.
But taking food in particular and really just substitute whatever it is for you. It's really about three things. It's about your habituated pathways, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've done this in the past. It worked in some way for you, right? It calmed your nervous system. It
Mm-hmm.
or it kind of puts you into a state where sometimes in life we don't know how to deal with the problem at hand, right? We're going through something and there doesn't seem to be a solution, but we know how to deal with our weight and when we eat too much, right? So we may actually create a situation for us with food because that's a problem we know the answer to, right? We can go on the diet. We can do the get up extra early and do the workout. And being able to put our focus on that is so much better than how am I going to deal with this, unfulfilling marriage or this career path that's not working out or whatever, maybe bigger and harder to figure out challenge that we may be facing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we start with the behavior, like I did. Okay, I'm 4 years old. I don't feel good inside. I'm reaching for something. I need soothing. It's not available anywhere to me. Oh, it feels great when I eat this Twinkie. Oh, these cheese and crackers, I felt a little better after I ate them. So the brain says, oh, okay, got it. You just taught me whenever that feeling comes up, go to food. Got it. Next time that happens and I feel that feeling, I'm not even going to check in with you because you already trained me, right? That
Mm-hmm.
this should be a behavior that we do all the time. It's like when we're driving and we see a yellow light. We don't sit there and be like, "Oh, yellow light. What am I supposed to do? Oh, that's right. I take my foot off the gas and I put it on the brake. Oh, good thing I remembered." It's just we just do it, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
after we've done this and used food or whatever it is a few times, saw that it worked, for even a moment, right? Then we have the pathways that are associated with it, and we become automatic with it. We don't even have to think about it. It just happens, and we wake up afterwards and be like, what just happened? Why did I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Because a part of us wasn't really there. We weren't conscious in that moment. We were just automatic. So that's a big aspect of it. The second thing is our nervous system, because when our nervous system is in need, meaning it's activated and we're up in those survival zones, whether that's fight or flight or the freeze state, overwhelm, we're looking for something to help us and to bring us down. So of course we, associate food with that, and it works. It actually, chewing and swallowing activates our vagus nerve. So that's part of the putting us in the parasympathetic. And honestly, once our body registers that there's a bunch of food in our system, it can force us into parasympathetic because we need to digest that food,
Yeah.
and then you with the dopamine and what it does neurochemically in the brain. So it works, right? And when our nervous system is activated and we need something, we turn to it. And the other thing about having an activated nervous system is when we're in that state, survival brain doesn't care about your long-term goals at all. It has no ability to override habituated pathways. It says we have to survive the next 30 seconds. I don't care about how you're going to look in 3 weeks at that wedding or whatever goal you set for yourself. It's
Yeah.
like right now, we're either going to eat those chips or we're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Those are our two choices. And it's convincing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the third piece is our emotions. So if we haven't been taught how to sit in uncomfortable emotions, we want to run as quick as we can, right? And that's kind of what we're taught, how to deal with our emotions. What's the quickest way to not feel this way, right? We're not taught how to get through, we're taught how to avoid. And if we don't have the tools to be in our uncomfortable emotions and our nervous system is revved up and we have these habituated pathways that put us on autopilot, forget it, right? We're of course we're going to go for the food. Of
Yeah.
course we are.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I could see just like little things popping in my head as you're talking. Like my mom always, and like my mom was great, first of all, she was fantastic, but she always used food in so many different ways, comfort, celebration. And I still do this. I definitely use food for comfort. I definitely use food for celebration. It's like, oh, I did that. I did the hard thing, let's go get a milkshake or an ice cream cone or something like that and
Yeah.
celebrate. So I could definitely see, you know, that just like lighting up that part of my brain. And then every time I want to celebrate, it's going to involve food. Not to mention that most celebrations do and like include food. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty normal one.
Absolutely. And you had said, is there a place where it's healthy and where it kind of crosses over? And what
Mhm.
I would say about that is I mean, we are emotional eaters. We come into the world and
Yeah.
we're comforted by the food. And that definitely plays into our maladaptive use. But I say, part of my own journey, I never thought that food and I would be friends, right? But I think we should be emotional eaters. I think food should be used in celebration. It should be used to comfort us, right? It's just not
Mhm.
the only thing. And and as a piece of life that fits in with our broader goals. Or like, we want to take care of ourselves and be healthy and all the things. But to say I should never turn to food, that would be like to deny being human. We should, right?
Yes. Yeah. I love
But
food.
yes, you should, and
Yeah.
it's a beautiful thing. And so, having overcoming emotional eating is not about eating not being emotional. It's about it not using it to abandon yourself and your needs, right? Because if I'm turning to food, I believe, and I came to this realization. It was such a crazy moment, because I always focused on my weight from my adaptation as a child. I thought that was the thing, but I came to a realization at some point in my journey where I said, you know what? Even if food didn't cause extra weight and there was no outward sign of me using food, it would still be worth it to fix this, because when I turn to food, I'm literally telling the part of me that's struggling, whether it's my nervous system or my emotions, more likely both. Here, I'm not going to deal with you. I'm not going to take care of you. Here's a cookie. Now go play. Right?
Yeah.
And that's not care.
Hmm.
So using food as because when you celebrate with food, you have a lovely milkshake and you're like, that was awesome. And it made this experience and it's part of this cool thing. Have six milkshakes every time you celebrate. Then you might be hurting yourself, right?
Yeah.
But there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with enjoying food. Please enjoy your food.
Definitely, yes. So let's move on to the next step where like how do we care for ourselves? What is the answer to this? Like how do we move
Yeah,
forward?
yeah. So it's understanding the need behind the food, right? And meeting those needs. And it really, at first, it means just setting aside that battle with food, just whatever food, however I'm eating, whatever, that doesn't matter. What matters is my overactive nervous system. What matters is the fact that I have these emotions and I don't know what to do with them. I don't know how to process them. I don't know how to see them as my compass and not be taken over by them. And
Hmm.
when we work there, right, the need for the food goes away. So we can stop fighting ourselves, stop fighting our bodies, stop fighting the food, tend to what is the food is serving, right? And it takes care of itself. And I make it sound so easy and so simple, right? And it's not. I don't mean to be like, oh, it's just so simple. All we do is
Yeah.
it's hard, but at
Yeah.
least when you have the right focus and you're putting your energy and your willpower into the right thing, you're going to win. When you put
Yeah.
your energy and your willpower into denying your needs, no way will we ever win by fighting ourselves.
So is it kind of like mothering yourself? And I guess the next question too would be to talk about your freedom formula. Is that
Yeah,
part of what you do with people?
absolutely. Yeah, the freedom formula really is it's a three-part system that leads from your adaptive self to your most expansive self and your most expansive life. So we're talking about in the first phase of the freedom formula is your foundation. It's
Okay.
your solid basement, because all of us, we know a lot of times what we want, and we're out there trying to create it at the behavioral level, right? Which is, in my mind, it's like, what you want in your life is like this big beautiful mansion that you're trying to build. And
Hmm.
the first phase of the freedom formula is your basement. It's your solid concrete foundation that will hold up everything else. And we're out here, when we start at the behavioral level, that means we're up here trying to build second floor balconies
Yeah.
with nothing underneath, right? It's not going to hold, it's going to crumble. You might be good for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, but it's going to fail again and again and again because it's not built on anything strong. So the first phase, which is this first book,
Mhm.
is all about getting out of survival mode and tending to your nervous system, because without that, you none of the other things are possible sustainably. So when we talk about how do we tend to our nervous system needs three things: safety,
Yeah.
capacity, and energy.
Hmm.
And with these three things, we can move on to step two, which is really understanding our adaptive thought patterns, right? And the thing is that people don't understand it. Everything is always mind and body, right? You know that. It's
Hmm.
always both things. But what people I think don't understand is, we try so hard and there's so much mindset stuff out there, which is great. It's good. It's needed. But if your system is in survival, you don't have access to the part of your brain that is capable of thinking new thoughts. You can think them, but they're not going to stick. They're not going to become part of your operating system. And so you're doing all this work, you're doing all this work, you're doing all this work, and nothing's happening. And then you use it as evidence that you're broken, right? And again, you're not the problem. If you
Hmm.
have a system that has the right conditions, that is capacitated and resourced, you can do anything. And
Yeah,
that's where we start.
yeah, I that is so good because it's so hard to get through to some people and tell them that they can't really progress until they balance their nervous system, you know?
Uh,
And yeah, none of the work that you're doing. Like, and I can't tell you how many times I've been with a client and they've been like, come back to me for the same problem over and over and over again.
yeah.
And I'm like, well, are you doing this? Or have you been doing, your breath work? Have you been doing, oh, yes. Oh, I have to get back to that. I'm like, yeah, you have to get yourself out of that fight or flight and that freeze before you can move forward to do anything else and work on anything else. And I think you just said that perfectly, perfectly. And
Yeah, isn't
so,
that the truth?
yeah.
And I actually, it's so cruel, to do to yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I found for me is like, gosh, every Monday, I got out my little notebook and I told myself exactly how I was going to behave and all the things I was going to do. And I didn't have any capacity for any of it. And yet I would set myself up that way every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is hard. It is hard because for a lot of reasons, because we're in pain and we want that thing at the end. And so it's so hard to not turn to that, right? Whatever it is, and to say, okay, I'm not going to touch that. And I'm going to work on my breathing exercise, my nervous system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
telling a child, I have a 10-year-old and she has Downs, and she just I'll tell her, oh, I made a haircut for you next Thursday. I will hear about that haircut 1,000 times a day from now until next Thursday, right? And because they want it so bad, it's like all you can focus on, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing we want when we get in our mind what we want. It is so hard to not put all of our effort into it. But you see it, people will struggle. And I did too. 30 some years doing the same thing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
won't do, I'm like, no, this really is the fastest way. I
Yeah.
promise. I promise. Look at your own data from your
Mm-hmm.
own life.
Yeah.
No, but if I could just do the thing, if I could just do the thing, if I could just get my shit together,
Mm-hmm.
then I'd be there. And then I'll worry about my nervous system.
Yeah, exactly. And it just doesn't work that way. And I feel like it took me way too long. I always feel that way about myself in different situations where I'm like, God, I wish it didn't take me so long to learn that for crying out loud. But I'm so grateful now that I have learned it. And I learned that lesson so many times that when I do fall away from it, because I do, obviously, I think we all
Of
do, it's not
course. Of
something you
course.
fix and then you never go back to it. It's something,
Yeah.
it's like a continuous lifestyle kind of thing. I know exactly how to get back to it. I know exactly what I need to do to, get my nervous system where it needs to be in order to move forward. So, and I do realize that that's the most important thing at this point before I do anything. So,
Amen. You just that it's so yes, everything.
yeah.
It is everything. And I love how you acknowledge, and I'm always surprised when people say, "What? Your nervous system still gets active?" I'm like, "Of course it does. It would be
Yeah.
broken, right? If it did,
Hmm.
Like that would not be good. Our nervous systems are responsive for a reason, and they're like a compass for us.
Yeah.
That they help us direct our lives into in good ways. But I love how you're saying, when I do, and of course I do. Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's when
Absolutely.
you have that foundation that I'm talking about. When you have that foundation, you're not you're not scared that your progress is going to be taken away. And that's what you get when you use willpower to achieve something. How many times, and I'm sure you've come across hundreds or thousands, tens of thousands of people who have said to you, oh, there was that one time when I did lose weight. I lost weight. I kept it off for a year and a half. And then I get, because
Hmm.
when we build something based on willpower, it's not sturdy.
Hmm.
And when we have the tools to constantly understand where we are, come back, for our individual systems, then we're secure. Yes, we still do the work. Every day I still do the work. But
Hmm.
I know that when I veer a little bit, because I'm not going to let myself veer far, when I veer a little bit, exactly what you said, I know how to get back on track. You know how to respond to that
Yeah.
message that the nervous system is offering.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's up to the individual person to really figure out what works for them, because what works for me doesn't necessarily work for like you. So I know what works really good and quick for me. And I've learned that over the years by trying a million different things. I've tried
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
I always struggled with like stress and anxiety. I always felt like I was a little high strung. And I think it was because that's how my mom was. It was almost in my DNA. I almost couldn't
Oh,
avoid
yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so knowing that, I was like, all right, I need to fix this. So I was like, how can I feel better? How can I get myself to feel better? How can I calm my nervous system? And just trying all those different things. And some things worked. Like, I tried tapping. That just didn't jive with me. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it doesn't work. Works for
Right.
some people magically, but
Yeah.
it wasn't my thing. Breath work was my thing. Meditation, yoga nidra was my thing. Running,
Mm.
go figure. So it's like you just have to figure out what works for you. And I think once you do that, then you have that toolkit to go back to.
Yes.
So
Yes.
talk.
I love that you're bringing that up because it's so important. And I also feel like it's a point that people really need to understand because just like a handyman doesn't show up to every job with just a screwdriver, right? He needs a full-on tool belt, and depending
Hmm.
on the job and what it requires. So each of us need a tool belt, but as you're saying, your tool belt may look different than my tool belt. And I think a lot of people who start with this work, they might start with meditation. Oh, I can't meditate. I'm on
Hmm.
my mind always races or whatever. Well, I think yeah, that's another topic,
That's a
but
whole nother
a
podcast.
whole nother, yeah, exactly. Yeah, but then, and things don't always work in the moment that, sometimes your nervous system's going to be like, no, I don't want to calm down. I need to be in this state because there's
Need to be
tigers all
vigilant.
around us. I need to be vigilant.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's not about finding a tool. It's about learning your system. And that's hard to hear. I remember being really frustrated when I realized that I was going to have to learn and develop this for myself. I was kind of pissed
Yeah.
um, because I just wanted you to tell me, just
Yeah.
freaking tell me the thing to do and I'll do it. But
Yeah.
and that's part of having the capacity to be in there and developing that knowledge of yourself. And it
Yeah.
requires that you learn to hear your body. You're not just going to put a tool on it.
Yes.
You're like, here you go. And I think that's really important to understand because when people don't have that underlying knowledge of their system, they will pull, oh, this vagus nerve hack or this thing over here. It's not going to be your answer. And that's okay. It might
Yeah.
be part of your answer ultimately.
Hmm.
But to really do this work and to have it as your foundation, you got to know yourself, which is a beautiful thing. It just, yeah, it is something that requires effort.
Yeah. And I think you brought up a really important point, which is I did say that not everything works, but you do have to give it a chance. Like you brought up with the meditation, the first time I tried to meditate, my body did not want to sit still. The first
Me
time I
too.
tried to do a yoga nidra, I was like, that's crazy doing a meditation for 20 to
Yeah,
30 minutes. That's crazy. Who does that? But
same.
now I'm like, that's my sanctuary. That's my place. And so you do have to give it a chance, definitely. And I think it's really important not to focus too much on those quick fixes. Uh, as a population that uses pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. Now, there's a place, as a good place for pharmaceuticals. I'm not saying they're bad, but
Right.
we're so used to that instant gratification, that instant feeling,
Hmm.
that when it doesn't come with certain remedies that we're searching for, we think it doesn't work. That's not always the case. We have to sometimes give things a little bit of time to naturally unfold. And
Yeah.
so talking about the tapping again, because I don't want to give tapping a bad name.
Yeah.
I tried tapping multiple times. I interviewed people on my podcast about tapping. It changes lives for people,
Yeah.
And so I definitely tried it numerous times. It just wasn't my thing. But yeah, that was an important point that you brought up. And I think that taking the time to try the different things can actually be fun sometimes. You can make it
Yeah.
fun. So, but I
Yeah.
would,
And it's interesting because I've noticed for myself, I've had different seasons where different
yes.
things worked for me. I had a tapping season.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it was just, and then it didn't feel as helpful. I was drawn to other things. And so
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's just certain, times and certain specific things that tools work for you, right? So I
Yes.
think of our practices and everything that they are ever evolving and we're becoming more skillful, like craftspeople, right? This is a
Mm-hmm.
craft that we're learning and it's fun to never be done and
Yeah.
to always have like, ooh, that could be fun, right? I didn't start
Mm-hmm.
that way, certainly, right? There was so much resistance. I don't want to have to do this. And really what that
Yeah.
means is I don't want to have to pay attention to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And somebody, I can't remember who it was. It was a guest I had on, but this was like a really good point she made. She said, because a lot of people are like, when I was a kid, I didn't have to do any of this stuff. And she said, yeah, but when you were a kid, you went outside and you played and you did all these
Yes.
different
Yes.
things. And she was like, that's kind of equal to like somatic shaking or somatic dancing. Like, she's like, did you ever
Yes.
watch a child standing in line with their mom and their
Mhm.
mom wants them to stand still and they're just flopping around and doing all this stuff? She
Yeah.
was like, that's their system trying to work out those frustrations of having to sit still in that moment. And that when you're a child, you automatically do those things. And
Yeah. You
almost
have
like,
opportunity. Yeah.
yeah. And so I was like, that's such an interesting way to like think about it. And it's almost like we're relearning how to feel, how to connect with the way our body feels. And you said that earlier, that it's really important to pay attention to how you feel
Hmm. Hmm.
and go take care of that and move into that. And I think you definitely move through that in seasons, like you said,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
running for me was really, really good for a long time. But then when my nervous system was really, really heightened, it wasn't good anymore because it just running puts you into fight or
Yes.
flight,
Yes.
right? So I noticed that running helped me release anger. But if I was
Hmm.
really anxious, running did not make me feel good,
Yeah,
which
'cause you're
was,
already depleted. There's nothing
yeah.
to offer the run.
So it was very interesting. And it's so paying attention to how you feel is very important, I think. And I really want to
And
talk
yeah,
about your book. Like,
awesome.
it's called You're Not the Problem. So
Yeah.
tell me about the book. I'm so interested. I love books. I read so many books. So tell me about it. I'm definitely
Oh,
going to read
awesome.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's really so much of what we've been talking about with that. Again, it's the first phase of the freedom formula, that basement. How do you build that basement to shift from your adapted self, the self you had to become in order to survive in your world, to your expansive self, the self that is your authentic self, the self that's calm and regulated and creative and curious and resourced, because that's the self that we want to take into life, right? That's the self capable of creating whatever it is that you
Mhm.
individually want to be, do, or have, and I listened to a few episodes ago where you were talking about, success as defined by what feels good to you. If you want to
Mhm.
I just want to be home and raising my kids, and that, awesome, that is success for you, and
Yeah.
so to become that, the version of you that's capable of creating your success, whatever that is, right? We need that solid foundation, and that's what this first book is. It's about teaching you that your adaptations are not flaws. It's not your personality. It's not what you're stuck with. It's how you learn to adapt. Now let's adapt again, this time towards wholeness and authenticity and resourcefulness and capacity. So it really is the three things that I mentioned. Takes you through each section of the book. One section is devoted to safety.
Mhm.
What does safety mean in the body? Right? It's not
Yeah.
your physical environment. It doesn't mean you're physically safe. It means you feel safe. Your body is able to register safety. Capacity. If you don't have the capacity to take on anything, then asking yourself to change is ridiculous.
Mhm.
It's like your little seed and you toss yourself into the flower pot with a couple tablespoons of sand and then stick it in the closet and be like, grow,
Good
blossom.
luck.
What's wrong with you? Why are you not blossoming? We got to give
Yeah.
ourselves the conditions, right? And capacity is one of those important things. And then the energy, a body that has been living in adaptations, stress, overwhelm, functions differently at the mitochondrial level. Your cells have been changed by years of stress. And so, how do we bring back energy into the body? Because if you don't have energy, you can want all of these things. You can even be going through the motions, but your body's going to stay in lockdown because it doesn't have what it needs. So we want to switch the mitochondria from cell danger response, which is just, they're just trying to protect and batten down the hatches, and all that, and switch it into energy production again so that you feel like doing the things, right? It cannot be just
Mhm.
a constant drag to do the things. And it's night and day when you have
Yeah.
capacity and energy. You can do the things that you've been trying to do for so long and failing at them, and you just do them and you're like, oh, wow, this is not so bad at all. It takes maybe some intention, but it's totally doable. And that's a
Yeah.
wonderful moment because then you can stop blaming yourself and you can reap the benefits of, what it is that you're wanting and achieving. And so that's really the basis for this first book. And it is a very, I use myself as, and many, many client stories that the wonderful people who allowed me to share. And I think it really brings it home because we can read about theory and about science and about our system all day long. And it's like, oh, okay, that explains a lot. But how does it actually show up in a person's life? I think is really what allows us to use it. And so,
Yeah.
for me, it's very raw. I didn't hold anything back, which was interesting because when I first thought, I want to bring this work out to the world, I thought, but it has to be all secret. I need a pen name and I need, many years ago, I thought I will never be able to tell anyone. And I didn't. Up
Yeah.
until, nearly 40 years old, I didn't tell anyone that I had any
Mhm.
of these struggles. I never told anyone that happened to me. No one knew.
Mhm.
And so now for me to be like, hey, here's everything,
Yeah.
the good, the bad, and the ugly. It was so interesting to me. Wow, how, I don't say easy, because of course it was challenging. I feel like I was in one of those dreams when you get on the bus and you forgot to get dressed.
Mhm.
And, it was a lot.
Yeah.
But I'm like, wow, I'm not embarrassed. Not
Yeah.
in the slightest bit. There's nothing in me that says I should be ashamed of myself and all the bad choices and all the, the rough stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good way to learn this information because it's real. It's how it looked in my life and in many others.
Well, I'm very excited to read it myself. As I said, I love reading. I'm always reading at least 10 books at a time. And it's like
Me too.
okay,
I mean,
good.
maybe not
Because
10, but at least five. At
yeah.
least five.
Yeah. And it's like I have like this little area next to my couch where I stack all the books.
Yeah.
And it looks a little cluttery, I'm not gonna lie, but every morning I'm like, which one do I like? What kind of mood am I in today? What do I want to read? You know, do I want to learn something? Do I want something fun? And that's how I decide what I'm reading. And so I'm excited to read this book because I do overwhelmingly read books that I learn from.
Me
And
too. Yeah.
just recently, my son kind of turned me on to reading for fun, which was kind of good. But I'm very excited to read it. So tell us where everyone can connect with you, like where you hang out, and also where everyone can find your book when it comes out, all the information.
Yeah, so the book, the intro is available right now
Okay.
for people to download, and you can definitely that'll probably be in the show notes, the link for that. You
Yes.
can also find that link on my website at www.lorimontry.com, LoriMontry.
Okay.
I also hang out on YouTube. And
Mhm.
as part of the book, I really want this to be much more than just, a book that people read in isolation. I've created a community around it and a movement around it because if enough people are building that strong foundation and have nervous systems that are capacitated and regulated and resourced, this world will be different.
Yeah, I agree with you. It would be
Yeah.
definitely a better place.
Yes, absolutely. And because we touch, all of the lives in our circle and in those circles and those circles. And for
Hmm.
whatever reason, when I as I was writing the book and realizing the impact that could have, I had I guess I'll call it a download that said, we need to touch 50 million people by the end of this decade. So by 2030, we need to have touched in this message in some form has to reach 50 million people. And I thought, what the heck? Where did that come from? That's not possible. And they said, no, okay, I have to do this. So I'm asking for help from, amazing people like you. Like we have to let people know that they're
Yeah.
not the problem and that with the right nervous system support, they can feel resourced again and
Yeah.
have the capacity to be the best versions of them, which will have that impact in the world.
Yeah, I would definitely love to be a part of that. And all that information will be in the show notes. And before we go, one last question, just a fun question. What is your go-to self-care practice that you use to kind of give yourself some relief, your nervous system relief?
Great question. Yeah, and it goes back to, it being different for all of us. But
Mm-hmm.
I think my real go-to, what I've learned most about self-care is for me, it's time where I can be responsive to me. I call it time where I see where the wind takes me. And
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is it's time where I don't have to, it's 9:45. I have to be this. I have to do this. I have to go get the kids. I have to make dinner. I have to whatever. It's just time where I can be like, what do I feel like? It's like what you do when you go to your reading corner,
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, what do I feel like? And then you respond by
Yeah.
giving yourself that, right? And that time has to be, I think, in the world that we live in the lives that we have, I think it has to be set aside. It won't
Mm-hmm.
happen organically, not in my life
No,
anyway. I
no.
have I have a little space every morning that's just for me. And I do whatever I want. It's usually roughly the same, my
Yeah.
journaling and my body's my somatic work and things, but I get to decide and then I have days or,
Mm-hmm.
half days or something where there's literally nothing planned. Nothing magic happens. I might stay in the shower for 5 extra minutes, whereas, normally it's like, okay, I'm clean. We're done here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is nice. I like the warm water, whatever. Oh, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like spending a few extra minutes and making this for myself for breakfast. It's just time to be responsive to me. And for
Yeah.
me, at least, that is the ultimate form of self-care, attunement.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
real attunement.
That's beautiful. I love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Well, thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. And all the information to connect with you and to check out the book will be in the show notes. And once again, it was lovely to meet you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you so much and all that you do and all of your offerings and just, you really get it. And I'm excited to know that you're out here doing great things.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new one. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps get the show in front of more people who might need this type of support. And if you're ready to take your everyday self-care even deeper, come join us inside the Soul Aligned Life Patreon. Every week, you'll get new self-care practices and tools to help reduce stress and overwhelm. Plus, we do a monthly reset to keep you aligned and supported always. You'll find the link in the show notes, and I'd love to see you there. Until next time, be sure to take good care of yourself. Love you. Bye.